Hey everyone, welcome to Time with the Bible Live. We have gone through this series of lessons looking at the different accounts, the different events that happen in Jesus's life, looking at his teachings and some of the things that he did, just kind of thinking about who Jesus is and considering ourselves as those who are seeking to be disciples, those who study their Bibles and trying to figure out who he is and what that means for us. So we're going to be in Luke chapter 24. We're going to spend just a few minutes there, probably a short little lesson here, a short little study, looking at Jesus with two of his disciples on the road to Emmaus. Before we get to the text, though, I want to do a little bit of a background. Think about some of the things that have happened here, leading up to here in Luke chapter 24. Jesus died. He's been buried. Of course, he's in the tomb, and the women, including Mary Magdalene and some other ladies, had gone to the tomb to give him a proper burial. And when they got there, they saw the stone rolled away. And when they looked inside, they saw that there was no body. Of course, they heard from the angels that he was alive. So they went and they told the apostles, and then Peter and John, they ran to the tomb. And when they got to the tomb, they found no body. They found where his body had been laid, but they found no body. And so now we're going to look at some events that happened, in fact, that exact same day, some things that took place. So look there in Luke 24, verse, we'll look there, beginning there, verse 13. Luke 24:13. It says, "Now two of them were traveling that same day to the village called Emmaus, which is 7 miles from Jerusalem. And they talked together of all these things which had happened. And so it was while they conversed and reasoned that Jesus himself drew near and went with them. But their eyes were restrained so that they did not know him. And he said to them, 'What kind of conversation is this that you have with one another as you walk and are sad?' And so then one of those whose name was Cleopas answered and said to him, 'Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem? Have you not known the things which have happened in these days?' And he said to them, 'What things?' And they said to him, 'The things concerning Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed, word before God and all the people, and how the chief priests and our rulers delivered him to be condemned to death and crucified. And we were hoping that it was he who was going to redeem Israel. Indeed, besides all this, today is the third day since these things happened. And yes, and certain women of our company who arrived at the tomb early astonished us when they did not find his body. And they came saying that they had also had a vision of angels who said that he was alive. And certain of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women said, but him they did not see. And he said to them, 'O foolish ones, and slow of heart to believe in all the people and all the prophets, what all the prophets have spoken. Ought not the Christ have suffered these things and to enter into his glory?' And beginning at Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them all the scriptures, things concerning himself." And so we have these two disciples from the text, from all of the accounts. We really don't know who these disciples are. The only thing that we know about them is that one of their names was Cleopas. This could have been Mr. Cleopas and Mrs. Cleopas. Some have suggested that because later on when they get into the city, they encourage Jesus to come dine with them and to stay with them. This could have been just two disciples that were traveling together, two men, two women. We really don't know anything about them outside of what we're told here in this account, but we don't know much about their identity. Anyways, these two disciples are on the road heading out of town of Jerusalem to a little village which was just outside of the city, just about 7 miles outside of Jerusalem. And they have this stranger coming up on them. They're having this conversation. They're really down and out. They're really sad. And the stranger comes up and says, "What are you talking about?" And what were they talking about? Like, according to the stranger, they seemed really sad. And they basically said, "There's this man that we thought was going to deliver Israel, redeem Israel under bondage of Rome. that he was going to reign in Israel. But he's gone, and he's been dead for 3 days, and there's not much hope for him. Now, they had heard some news. They'd heard that the women had gone to the tomb, but they didn't find the body, and that's really odd. Seems like they're complexed over that. And then they heard John and Peter had gone to the tomb, and they didn't find any body there. They're kind of complexed over all that. They don't know what that means for all these things, but they're thinking, well, there's really not a lot of hope. He's gone. And then this stranger corrects them. He says, "You're foolish. Don't you understand the scriptures? Haven't you read in passages that the Messiah was going to suffer?" And it says that at the end, it says, "And beginning at Moses and all the prophets, he expounded them all the scriptures and things concerning him." Wow, that must have been an amazing sermon. Maybe a short one. It was only 7 miles to Emmaus, but I would really like to hear what he said and all of that. You can think about him thinking back to what Moses said about Jesus being the prophet. You think back to a passage like Isaiah 53, where it describes that the Messiah was going to suffer. He's going to be the suffering servant. He's bear the sins of the nation in his own body. You can think about Psalm 22, where David expressed that he felt abandoned by God, but Jesus quoted that on the cross, and maybe he spoke concerning that passage, and all the suffering that we see in the lamb that was offered. You could look at lots of different passages. It makes you wonder what Jesus taught them. But one of the things it shows is that the scriptures are indeed the spot, the place for us to prove Christ and prove that what he claimed and what God had prophesied hundreds or even 1,000 years before Jesus came to this earth, what was to happen and happened and was fulfilled in Christ. And so I'm curious, because it says in the text that their eyes were blinded to this stranger, that it was Jesus. It says it was Jesus, but it says that their eyes were restrained. I'm assuming Jesus looked like he always looked, but there was some miraculous thing that had prevented them from recognizing him to be who he is. And here in a minute, they're going to come to recognize him for some of the things that he does. So let's go ahead and read the last section, 28 to 35. It says, "Then they drew near to the village when they were where they were going, and he indicated that he would have gone further, but they constrained him, saying, 'Abide with us, for it is towards evening, and the day is far spent.' And he went to stay with them. And now it came to pass, as he sat at the table with them, that he took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. And their eyes were open, and they knew it, and he vanished from their sight. And they said to one another, 'Did not our hearts burn within us while he talked to us on the road, while he opened up the scriptures to us?' And so they rose up that very hour and returned to Jerusalem, and found the 11 and those who were with him gathered together, saying, 'The Lord is risen indeed, and have appeared to Simon.' And they told them about the things that had happened on the road, and how he was known to them in the breaking of bread." And so as they're coming near to Emmaus, it's interesting, Jesus said he was going to go on past the village. Makes you wonder why he said that, but they begged him, they plead with him, "Come, dine with us, be with us." And so he stopped, and he goes into their home, and he's sitting at their table with them. And before they partake of the supper, it says that he took the bread and he broke it and blessed it. And then it says that their eyes were opened. Man, you could go back throughout the scriptures and you can see the number of times that Jesus took the bread and he blessed it. He gave thanks. That's what he did. He gave thanks for his food. Something that we ought to be doing as well. But it says when he had done that, their eyes were open to who he was. I'm not sure if he released the veil, or if the fact that he took the bread and blessed it, and maybe it was in the way that he blessed it. You think about the 4,000, the 5,000. You think about the many times that Jesus had dined with his disciples, and if these two people were some part of the disciples, they would have heard him do it, like possibly daily, give thanks for the bread. And maybe in that moment they came to recognize, this is who we're dining with. They recognized him. Um, they recognized that it was Jesus. And the moment that they recognize him, he's gone. He vanishes. Um, and so they're talking amongst themselves, saying, "Didn't why didn't we see this before? Didn't our hearts burn within us? Weren't we convicted by the things that he said on the road? Like, why wouldn't we have recognized that this was Jesus?" And so they went back and they told them. It says they rose early and they returned to Jerusalem, and they told the 11. They told the 11 that they confirmed the message of Peter, and then they told them all the events that took place while they were on the road heading to Emmaus. Now, it's interesting because some other passages like Mark says that they told the 12, they told the 11, and they still didn't believe. They still didn't believe it. I think about the apostles just being so depressed, so discouraged that this man that they'd given up everything to follow, he was dead and he was gone. And they just struggled to recognize this man who they know to be dead, to have died. They struggled to recognize that he could be alive. Now, these two, their hearts were opened as the rest, as the women as well. And, this pretty incredible passage, There's lots for us to take from it. I hope that's helpful for you, just something to think about, something to meditate on as you go throughout the rest of your day. I appreciate you coming on and taking and participating and being a part of the study as well. I hope everybody has a great day. God bless.